I am so excited to be joined on the More Than the Music podcast by Mr. Ryan Stevenson. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks so much for doing this. We're going to talk about the songs on the album Fresh Start. Plus, we've got a brand new song from Ryan Stevenson that we're going to talk about as well. But before we jump into the music, let's start back at the beginning and how this whole thing got started for you. When did you know that this is what you were going to do?
Oh, wow. Well, man, I always wanted to be a drummer. I never thought I would ever play a guitar and sing songs and write songs. I mean, I started playing the drums in the third grade, played drums all the way through high school and even into college. But my youth pastor gave me a guitar when I was 18 as a graduation present.
Wow.
Didn't really make sense to me because I didn't play. And I didn't.
You're like, I'm a drummer, man.
Yeah. I was like, dude, give me a drum set.
A little less expensive. Probably.
Exactly. He got me this little cheap acoustic guitar and he just said, I felt like the Lord was telling me to give this to you and happy graduation. And off I went, and I just kind of shelved it. I didn't play it. And then when I got to college, my freshman year, all the guys that lived in my dorm hallway, they all play guitar. So I just learned like literally overnight, like I could just do this thing. It just clicked and it made sense. And I didn't take any music lessons. I can't read music. I didn't take any guitar or anything like that. I just kind of learned how to play chords and by ear. And then that just really opened up this huge other piece where I was able to I just started writing out the things that were going on inside of my heart, like down on paper and putting it to melodies. And it, like that guy, my youth pastor, man, his buying me that guitar really was kind of the turning point for a major turning point in my life. And then, played in bands all through college. And
none of those guys in your dorm needed a drummer. Like, they needed another guitar player.
I wish they would have needed a drummer, but it's like I feel like everybody plays the drums and everybody plays the guitar, so it's like, which one are you gonna do? But I kind of went through this crazy phase where I stopped doing music altogether. I just felt like it wasn't gonna happen anymore, and it was just not for me, and I had no future in music at all. And so I went back to school. I got my license as a paramedic and started working as a paramedic for between 8 and 9 years. And then in the middle of my paramedic career, I got signed to a record company, which is another crazy story of how I kind of got here even more. And I could go all into that, but it's just been, a series of just little watershed moments that have kind of led up to sitting right here.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely going to get into more of that, but you grew up in Bonanza, Oregon. Is that right?
Oregon,
What is
yes.
there to do in Bonanza, Oregon?
Shoot squirrels, go hunt jackrabbits, deer hunt, fish, work on farms, work on dairies.
Dude, that sounds a lot like South Georgia. That's where I grew up.
Yeah.
But that's so far from the South, but what you're describing sounds a lot like the South.
I'm sure it's really similar.
Yeah,
man. I grew up in this little itty bitty town called Bonanza, and it's just surrounded by alfalfa fields and sugar beets and wheat, and it's kind of nestled on the eastern side of the Cascade Mountain Range in south central Oregon, and it's just beautiful, total country. My town, Bonanza, had 250 people in it.
Wow.
Graduated with 48 kids in my class.
That's a lot smaller than my small town.
Yeah. I'm sure most people, when I tell them I'm from a small town, they're like, how many, like 10, 20,000? I'm like, 250 total, not 250,000.
So where do you tell people you're from? Because I grew up in a small town, and I always have to tell them the bigger town that's like right down the street. Yeah. Where do you have to tell people you're from?
I tell them I'm
from
Klamath Falls, Oregon.
Okay.
And there's some people, that ups the odds a little bit. Like some people know, oh yeah, I know Klamath. But if they don't know Klamath Falls, then I'll say, I'm from Medford area.
So how far is that actually?
Medford is about 2 hours from us.
You're in a small town when you have to tell people you're from a town 2 hours away.
Exactly. Yep.
So what did you do like on a Friday night? What was there for kids to do on a Friday night? We used to cruise around our mall because that was all there was to do. Man,
there literally go drive around the country roads and get into mischief and, be country boys, go out spotlighting porcupines in the field or skunks or, riding in the back of the truck through the middle of the alfalfa fields with a spotlight looking for
Man, we grew
rodents.
up so far away, but it sounds like we grew up just like so similar,
Totally,
man.
dude.
That's
Yeah.
South Georgia written all over
Yeah.
it. What'd you do today? I don't know. Went skunk watching.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got a song about Bonanza too on this record, man.
Yes.
It talks about just the town that built you. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool to hear all these elements of where you grew up make it into your music.
Yeah, man. It's, the song is called From the Ground Up, and it was just, I'm so thankful for where I came from. And there's just something to be said about growing up in a small town, in a small community, surrounded by a tight-knit group of family and friends that just teach you things at a young age, like integrity and loyalty, and, honoring your commitments and letting your yes be your yes and your no be your no. And, we coming from a small town, my family was a little lower on the socioeconomic class, if you will. But, there's a line in there, we didn't have much, but we always had each other. And that's just such a major part of who I am, is knowing that I have the people in my life and they have me, and we're together no matter what. And we don't need a lot, because life is not about materialistic things. It's about heart connection with one another and doing life together and loving each other well. And truly, that's what I learned growing up in a small town. It was not about big city life and materialism, and it was just very, very scaled down in the natural. What you see is what you get type of mentality, and that's just the way it was, and that's a huge part. That's just who I am, and so I'm proud to be from a small town where I got to learn some really important values at a young age, like not being entitled, and to work hard, and to never expect handouts, because that's just not the way the world works, and you don't always win. And I know I sound a little conservative and old school saying things like that, but that's just the truth, and I'm proud of where I come from like that.
You said you started playing drums in the 3rd grade and then got your first guitar at 18. Was your family musical? Was music all around you as a kid?
Not really. I mean, my mom and dad both sang in the church choir, but neither of them really played an instrument. My dad sure didn't, and my mom kind of dabbled on the piano, but not really. And so it was just kind of interesting that I was just able to do these things, and I just had a knack for it, just super rhythmic. I mean, I remember my mom would always tell me at a young age, we had bunk beds in my room, and I would always be on the top bunk with all of her pots and pans and coffee cans, like making a drum set.
Yeah.
So I was just always really rhythmic, and starting, with the drums, it just made playing guitar, playing piano, playing all these other instruments just easy. Yeah. Because I had the rhythm part down.
I'm a drummer too, and church was the place where I really got to experience music for the first time and get involved. Was that like for you? Did you start getting involved in music because of church?
Totally. My mom, and I really resented her for it for a while, but she put me in this children's choir one time, and it's like, what are you doing? Like, I don't want to sing, and I have this high-pitched, squeaky little voice, and I'm underdeveloped. I'm like, I don't want to be in the choir, but it was so cool to learn how to sing a little bit, and then I went into band in the 5th grade. And when I got into band, like elementary band and then junior high band, it was actually in school, in the public school system, where I really started getting into music.
I mean, it was the opposite for me. I got into school music, and I was like, I hate this marching stuff. We're just playing the same songs, go, fight, go, every single night. Right. And I'm like, I want to do something fun. So I really went back to the church, and that's where I had the most fun in music.
Amazing.
So it's cool to hear the different perspectives of how music just impacts people in totally different ways.
Yep.
Man, also growing up, you were a pretty big baseball fan too, right?
Sure.
Were you a Braves fan as a kid?
Hardcore.
Because I grew up in Georgia, so clearly I'm a Braves fan, but how are you a Braves fan all the way in Bonanza, Oregon?
Because one of the only stations that we got on TV was TBS. Yeah. And every night, in certain seasons of the year, I'd come home and the Atlanta Braves would be on. And so I loved baseball. I loved all the old great Braves players. And I wanted to be, a baseball player. So I grew up from as early as I can remember watching the Atlanta Braves in the evenings with my dad. And so I just grew up loving the Braves.
And
That
what
was our
happened?
team.
Like, why aren't you playing for the Braves right now? Didn't you want to be a baseball player as a kid?
You know, I did. And then, interestingly enough, like, I didn't grow normally like other kids. Like, I was a super duper 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 late bloomer. So I didn't really hit my growth spurt until I was almost 19. So in college is when I did all my growing. So high school athletics were just non-existent for me. I could not do a thing. You know, I stayed in the body of a sixth grader until almost my freshman year in college. So I have this huge chunk of my life, physically, emotionally, athletically, that just wasn't there. So that's why I'm not playing for the Braves these days.
I tried to play, and my dad thought I was the best player ever in the next Chipper Jones, but the coach didn't feel that way.
Loved
So
Chipper, man.
I sat on the bench a lot in high school, and my dad wondered why. And here I am, pushing buttons and talking
Right
with
on.
Ryan Stevenson
That's
right
cool,
now.
dude.
Man, you go to college, and you meet a guy named Paul Wright, and then you guys start a band, and that's kind of where music really took off for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Paul was my next door neighbor, and Paul actually taught me how to play guitar. And we just hit it off and became super close friends, and we created this little acoustic pop duo, and he would kind of rap and I would sing and beatbox, and like we just did that, and then it just grew and grew and grew and grew till we were playing everywhere all over the Northwest and opening up for bands like Switchfoot, and it was just such a natural, cool thing. And so yeah, those were just super fun days, and that's really, you know, being with Paul is where it all kind of began.
And then, like you were just saying earlier, that you kind of left music a little while after that. What do you think caused you to go, no, this is not for me, I'm going to try something else?
Well, there was kind of a point in time, Paul and I had played together for about 5 years, and I think, you know, Paul he kind of had a desire to just do something a little bit different, and so Paul got offered a record deal, and with Goatee Records, actually, and so Paul became Paul Wright, the solo artist, and the rest of us just kind of, I went back into school teaching, and I just figured, you know what, this just isn't my time, it's just not going to work out, this just isn't for me, obviously, you know, and it's not like the band was offered a record deal, Paul was, and so Paul became Paul Wright, the solo artist, the rest of us kind of went and did our thing, and so it was really when Paul, you know, became a solo artist, I went kind of took a career path and went into teaching, and I taught school for 2 years and realized how much I hated it and how brutal it was, and it was not what I was supposed to be doing. So I went back to school, got my paramedic license in the state of Idaho, and began working as a paramedic, because that's what I originally went to college for, was medicine. I wanted to be a doctor. I ended up not doing that, but got my degree in education, taught for 2 years, went back to school, worked as a paramedic for all those years. And it was in the middle of my paramedic career that I started, you know, playing music again. And I just felt like this hunger and this desire and this passion to do, because I had been such a support act for Paul for a long time. You know, I was a songwriter and just kind of a background vocalist and a beatboxer and a rhythm guitar player. But I felt like maybe I have something to say as me, as Ryan. There's things that are going on in here that I would love to share with people. And I just started doing that, just started cultivating this little thing around the Pacific Northwest. And it just, I don't know, man, I just started seeing it connect with people in a real tangible way. And I feel like that's kind of a telltale sign when you get invited back to places.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
You know, that's kind of my litmus test of, is this working? Is this effective? Is it connecting? You know, one little date is turning into 3, and people want me back. They love what they're hearing, and they, you know, it's connecting. And so that's really kind of, I was a paramedic for 8 years, and a crazy thing happened in the middle of my paramedic career that kind of catapulted me and shot me out of the paramedic world right into music.
And it was a patient, someone that you went to help, ended up helping you launch your music career, right?
Yeah, a 40-year-old lady got struck in the head by lightning, and it killed her. She was dead on scene. I showed up. I was the paramedic that happened to respond to that call, loaded her in the ambulance. I ended up reviving her in the back of the ambulance on the way to the hospital.
Man.
And about a year and a half later, after she made a full recovery, she survived, total miracle. We met up at this banquet and we just started to get to know one another. And she eventually ended up helping me. You know, she just found out that I had this love and this passion for music and that I was kind of this local artist guy doing my thing around the Northwest. And she said, I want to help you. There's just obviously way more to you than just this paramedic thing. How do I help you? And I said, well, I would love to record my songs, like a really good recording, not just, you know, on my phone. Back in those days, I had a flip phone. I didn't have voice memo on the iPhone.
Did you have to call yourself to leave yourself a
totally,
voicemail? Is
exactly.
that how you recorded the songs?
To call into my voicemail.
Yeah. Hey, Ryan, it's Ryan.
Remember this one. She ended up writing me a check and funded a big portion of my studio time. And that got me.
Wow.
I took that little project and sent it to a record company, and that landed my first little deal. And it was like literally in a very short amount of time, I was having all these tour opportunities. So I was trying to keep one foot in the paramedic world and one foot in the music world. And I just couldn't do it. I had to make a decision, and I knew the Lord was saying, hey, I've brought you to this place, you know, and this is what you've dreamt about. This is your passion. This is what you want to do. And I've just prepared you for this. Here you go. So I went into the music thing.
Yeah. Looking back on what happened and, you know, considering that you were going full throttle into music and then it kind of fizzled out and then you go into paramedics and then now you're back in music. Do you look back on that and are you thankful for that journey?
So thankful.
Do you see now what God was doing?
I talk about this all the time. You know, I'm so thankful for every experience, but when I was 21, when we, you know, were first, and when Paul and I were first getting going, you know, I can't speak for Paul, but like when I was 21 personally, I just wasn't ready, and I thought I was, but I just feel like having been given the opportunities and the relationships and the platform, if that's what you want to call it, having given that what I have now at the age of 21. I just would have squandered it. I know that. I know me. I know what I was capable of back then. I know my character back then, and it just was not the vine was doing okay, but the roots were not able to sustain the fruit that was ultimately going to be hanging on those. And I'm just so thankful that the Lord had his hand on me and just put that to a stop and said, not right now. I'm going to grow you for a little bit. And hindsight is just 2020. It's amazing to see his hand in everything.
Yeah, and then getting to this record, the title track, the first song off the album is Fresh Start. So why is this now a fresh start for Ryan Stevenson?
That's easy, because before this record, I was on another record company for 10 months. I was on a record company, and I was dropped after 10 months. And at that point, I just knew it was completely over. That I had failed, that I was just not.
Here we are again.
Yeah. You know, I'm not cut out to be a musician and an artist, but I was still getting. So my record company went away, but I was still getting all these opportunities to play and play and play, and I felt like the Lord was telling me, "Don't freak out. I've still got you. Your eyes don't see what I see, so I want you to just be quiet and just keep moving forward. Just keep walking one day at a time, and I will show you." And I felt like he said, just keep writing down the things that are in your heart in this season, in this time, all these gut-wrenching, hopeless things that you feel right now, and you feel like nobody wants a thing to do with you, and you feel overlooked, you feel forgotten. I want you to write these things down right now. And I just kept writing all these songs. And in that season of time, I started writing this song called Speak Life. And I started recording all these things and working on this little project. And one of my lifetime, you know, inspirations and influences is this dude named TobyMac. And
no one knows this guy, though. Like, who?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, who's he? You know, I grew up on this band called DC Talk, and they were just huge influences in my life. And I was recording all these songs during this time here in town, and Toby happened to come into the studio that I was working at and heard some of these songs that I was playing, and just really loved what he heard and heard something special, I guess, and heard this song in particular called Speak Life, and he had this huge breath of inspiration for it and a really cool other, side of it. And so we really came together and collaborated and finished up Speak Life together. So that was kind of the real, to me, was the telltale watershed moment, fresh start. Like, because I kind of get emotional when I talk about it, but it was like, I feel like Toby, he saved me. Like he literally, when it felt like nobody wanted a thing to do with me. Everybody was saying no. I knew that I was damaged goods because I was hearing it all the time from industry people. Like, and they wouldn't say it to my face, but I would hear that through the grapevine. Like, you're kind of, that's the battle you're going to have now, is that you're going to be viewed as damaged. And Toby just came in at the 11th hour and said, I believe in you. I believe in your heart. I want to walk with you if you'll walk with me, and let's do this thing. And so it was just like, that's why I'm just so loyal to him, because he truly reached in the ditch and saved me at a time when it felt like it's truly over and it's hopeless. And Toby just, it was just like this rebirth, this fresh start, this, all these songs and everything that the Lord had been teaching me through all that time was put right into that record.
It sounds like he does that a lot, because I've had Finding Favor and Holland on the show, and the artists at Goatee Records, man, they speak so highly of him, and now he just pours into their lives, into their music, into their character, and it sounds like he did the same for you.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing to have Toby pour into the songs and work with him on songs. I've written tons of songs with him now, but it's another thing, like, he's actually in my life as a friend, as a mentor. Like, he's close with my family. It's not just a business relationship. Like, he really is just invested in the people that he works with. And it's just special. It's like, it's family,
Yeah. And speaking of your family, your wife and your 2 kids, you guys are in Boise now.
Boise.
Man, that's a long way from Nashville, where a lot of the music business is happening.
I know,
how are you balancing all this stuff?
It's been an adjustment for sure. I fly Southwest Airlines a lot, so Southwest can give me
for the peanuts.
Thank you. I fly a lot. I commute back and forth a lot, and we've just learned to kind of balance life and be super intentional about being a family. When I'm not on the road, our number one priority is just being together, no matter what that looks like, no matter what it takes. We will move things. We will do whatever we need to do. And sometimes, like, when I'm on the road for extended periods of time out here in Nashville and on the tour buses out here, my wife and boys will come out here.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so we're kind of honestly in a transition right now of being out in Franklin more often as a family, rather than commuting all the time.
Is that something you're considering, moving to the Nashville area? Oh,
totally.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. Are you leading worship at a church in Boise? I heard you were at one time.
At one point, yeah. I helped plant a church. Me and a couple other people planted a little church in Boise, about 8 years ago now. And actually just this last year or so, I was the main worship leader there for years. And this last year, it just got to be, I just could not, with touring and everything that's just going on,
you're rarely home on the weekends,
I know.
to even go to church.
How am I supposed to be super committed and dedicated to my church when I'm, out on the road? And I just felt like this, for this stage in my life and this season of time right now, I'm right where I'm supposed to be, and that I was supposed to release the reins to my church, and so we had another worship leader come in and take over, and it's been amazing. And so we're just kind of like in this crazy transition period in life, honestly, because this is new to my wife and I as well.
Yeah. I mean, some people think that, when you're on the road, you're a singer, you're a musician, you go to church, you do the same thing, but sometimes you just want to sit and be poured into as well.
Sure.
I imagine that it's a little refreshing in this season now where you have the chance to do that a little bit.
Totally. I love going to church, I mean, for 8 years straight, I never went to church with my wife. I mean, I was always going to church before her early in the morning, and she would trickle on along behind us with the kids, and I would be there till 1 o'clock, doing 2 or 3 services. And now it's like, it just feels so awesome to go to church and sit with my wife.
Yeah.
And just, snuggle up to one another in church and just rest and worship and sing and pray and soak and cry, and I love it, man.
You don't really have the opportunity to do that when you're on stage.
No. No.
You're leading people into worship, but a lot of times you're not necessarily getting fed.
Yeah, for sure, man.
The next song that we're going to talk about on Fresh Start is What You Say. What's the story behind this song?
Easy. I grew up, because of the way I grew up, and I mentioned earlier, I didn't develop normally as a normal kid would. Like, I didn't grow. I was a late bloomer, and I didn't grow normally like all the other boys in my class. So, when they were all coming into their, young male bodies and getting muscles and growing and all that, like, I just didn't. And so it left this huge, massive identity complex in my life. And I just literally felt like an outcast. I felt worthless. And I grew up believing a lot of lies. My family was poor. I was not really picked for, any sports. I felt like I was the last person chosen for everything. And I grew up always under the blanket and under the lie of, you're not good enough, you're not skinny enough, you're not fast enough, you're not. And I know that I'm not the only one that feels that way. We all grow up buying into lies at a young age that trickle right on into our adulthood. And none of us really make it into adulthood whole. And so my heart in this song was, man, I'm so sick and tired of the enemy just always lying to us. He's the father of lies. And I felt like the Lord was saying, stop believing those lies. Stop. And I want you to believe what I say about you.
Yeah.
That you are a new creation, that you are a good creation, that you're a saint, not a sinner, that you're a friend, that, not a slave, that you are beautiful, that you are fearfully and wonderfully made, that you are beautiful. And that was just like, that was really the heart that came out in that song was, I want to believe what you say. And that was where that came from.
And another song on this album, too, that I love is Dare You to Trust My Love.
Sure.
You've got an incredible story behind this one as well.
Absolutely. I was reading this book called The Ragamuffin Gospel by Brennan Manning. And I don't know if anybody's ever read that, but if you haven't, I would recommend it. And he just talks so much about his whole motivation is just the grace of the Lord and how he's experienced the grace of God in his own life. And even through the midst of his alcoholism and his struggles and his addictions, the Lord just constantly pours out heaps of grace in his life. And just, he said this one line in the book. He said, if Jesus were to come into this room right now and see us sitting here, and he knows all of our dirty junk, and he knows our feeble prayer life, he knows our inconsistency, he knows every skeleton in our closet, he knows everything about us, he would still just sit down and hold us, and he would literally say, I dare you to just trust the fact that I love you just as you are right now, not as you think you should be. And that really changed me. Like that began to change and shift the paradigms in my mind of how I perceive God. Like, wow, do we really have this God that we can trust, who's good all the time, that doesn't have wavering degrees of goodness? And so I just wanted to encourage people, as if the Lord were talking to every single one of us. I dare you to trust that I just love you right now, just as you are, not as you think you should be.
I saw a post on Facebook the other day, and it kind of jarred me because I think too often we think of church as a place where we're supposed to come when we have it all together. And this person was kind of speaking out of that area, and they were like, don't come to church like this, don't come to church like this and this and this. And I'm like, God loves everyone just the way they are. Yeah, their heart's going to change, But I would hope that church is a place where everyone is welcome, no matter what you look like, what you smell like, what you've been through. That church should be a hospital and not some huge sanctuary. I mean, I get that it is a sanctuary, but you know what I mean? Like, it's a place where everyone is welcome. And I feel like this song represents that in a way.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, to me, church is about family.
Yeah.
That's just it. If I could just define church, it's all about family and just being together. And
it's the place you come to get it together, not when you already have it together.
Absolutely. Because none of us have it together. We're all in our flesh. We all struggle. It's, oh man, I could go on and on about that, but I won't. Church is where family comes together, and the weeds grow with the flowers, man. We're all going to get each other's junk on us at one point or the other.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing that I've heard that you struggle with is being hangry. That when Ryan Stevenson gets hangry, it is not a pretty sight.
Oh, man.
You can thank some of your tour buddies for that little nugget of information.
Is somebody sending you some texts right now? I get like grouchy because, okay, let me back up. I used to weigh 300 pounds.
No, you did not.
I promise you.
No, you didn't.
So I've lost almost 130 over the course of 8 or 9, 10 years. But I get low blood sugar sometimes. And when I do that, I start feeling kind of dizzy and just grouchy. And so like, actually right now, I'm pretty hangry.
Look, I'm glad you're keeping it together for this interview,
But here's the thing, like I drank like 3 cups of coffee this morning and nothing else. So I have an empty stomach with caffeine. And man, I'm doing great.
It's not as bad as what they described then, because you're keeping it together right now if you're feeling a little hangry.
Yeah, I'm a little hangry,
I appreciate
but I'm good.
that.
I'm good to go, man.
Man, the song that has just blown up this past year for you is the song Eye of the Storm. I mean, my goodness, could you have seen this coming when this song first came out?
Never in a million years. In fact, I love to tell that story because we specifically wrote Eye of the Storm as the song that was not going to go to radio. Like we knew, okay, well, we can write this one and say whatever we want to say and make it however we want to because we know it'll never be a radio song. And so we just started talking about, the things in our own personal lives and things that we were seeing in our friends' lives, like the addictions and the loss and the job loss and the feeling betrayal and me personally losing my mom and having to put her on hospice and, just losing my twins. My wife and I lost our twins, a couple years back. And it was just like I was just going through things in my own personal life. My co-writer Brian was going through some things, and we were just collectively just seeing a lot of things boiling down in the lives of our close friends and family that were earth-shattering and ground-shaking. And I just knew we have to write a song that just talks about things that human beings actually go through. And working as a paramedic for 9 years, I promise you, if there's one thing that I have seen consistently is the fragility of humans. And like, we are truly a vapor. We're here one second, we're gone the next, and we're so fragile and things can happen. And I got a front row seat for years to like people really, really in the middle of just deep catastrophic loss and tragedy. And it changed my life. It woke me up and it gave me an incredible sensitivity for life and people and what we actually go through as humans. And none of us are different. The thing that unifies every one of us is that we're just people, and we all have those storms that come into our lives. But this song was just deliberately, we wanted to just blatantly say, you remain in control in the middle of this thing that's overtaking my life right now. And I'm going to suffocate. I feel like I'm going to die. I know you're in control, Lord, and I can trust you. My only hope is to trust you because you are God and you are over it all. And that's just what we wanted to say. And
you can sing that with such sincerity. I mean, your mom died in 2009 of bone cancer, and you talked about the miscarriage and losing those twins. mean, you can speak that's real in your life. That's not just some clever lyric that you thought up in a writing session, right?
Sure. Yeah, it's still really real to me. You know, I mean, I miss my mom. I'm the only son. I'm the baby of our family, and so my mom and I were really tight, and those things are very real to me. You know, miscarriages and losing your kids, and death of a close loved one, especially your mother. You know, a couple of my good friends lost their daughters to some sickness, and they were, 21, 22, 23-year-old girls that died from addictions and genetic disease. And it was just crazy gut-wrenching to see them walk through these things, And so Eye of the Storm has just been, it's almost kind of given people permission. It's almost given them this, because I hear about it all the time. They write in thousands of emails, and it's amazing to see people. It's like Eye of the Storm has given people permission to just be vulnerable. Yeah. And that's how revival starts, is when we're vulnerable and we're just able to speak about what's going on, because it just shows people the grace of, it shows people the power of the Lord, It's crazy how it all works out.
So often healing starts when we allow ourselves to be broken.
Totally.
Like sometimes, most times, it just takes us getting down to the lowest of the lowest to, one, understand that we need God, and two, for us to rely on Him. And then on the other side of that, that's where you see healing.
Yeah. I heard this quote the other day. It says, one of the most powerful tools of evangelism is not just the gospel message contained in the scriptures, but the gospel message connected to your own story.
That's good.
And it's like when we connect our own story, when we sit people down and tell them the garbage of our lives and what our lives were like and then Jesus came in, like, that's powerful, And so I like to share that, because I think it's just so appropriate for all of us in the storms.
And you got a brand new song out too. Gives us something to look forward to in the future. A new record from Ryan Stevenson. We're talking about Fresh Start right now, but there's already new music in the works. This brand new song, The Gospel. You kind of talked about it a little bit already, but man, what's the story behind this brand new song?
We wanted to write a song that talked about, it's easy to turn on the TV or the news or the radio and hear about tragedies around the world, hear about division, hear about disunity, hear about catastrophe, and I feel like the trap that we get into as people, and I'm guilty of it too, is when something arises, a shooting, a fight, a war, a struggle, we try to point to that issue. We try to deal with that issue directly. We try to speak individually to all these certain things and figure out all these remedies to this and that and this and that, when the truth is we have the remedy. We have the one and only remedy that would cure everything, and it's called the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's called living out the good news for all to see, where revival just takes over. And that was what we just wanted to say, is what the gospel does. Can we just stop talking about all these other things and just get back to our first love? Just get back to the gospel and watch what happens, even right in our nation, when Christians come back to that place of their first altar and start living the gospel.
That's, a lot of times when tragedy happens, just like you said, we start trying to blame it on everything else and pinpoint out everything else. But really, we have the answer as believers. We have the truth.
It is.
The cure.
It's the gospel. It's Jesus Christ. And getting back to a lifestyle of devotion where He is the only thing that matters, and we don't negotiate that anymore. And I feel like when we do that, the Lord responds to that by pouring out His presence. When we live lifestyles of worship like that, and we get back to our first love, and we live the gospel, He responds by pouring out presence, and it transforms a region.
Something definitely to look forward to. New music on the way from Ryan Stevenson. Already loving this brand new song. Thank you so much for being here, man, for sharing the stories behind the songs on Fresh Start, and for giving us a little insight into Ryan Stevenson, the man, too. Thanks so much.
Yeah, buddy, of course.